one of the things that we're using in this activity is a static constant that belongs to the class, right? It's a data member that belongs to the class, but it's public and it's static. Now, we haven't written one of these before, but we have used them. When we were using the string class, we accessed one of the static members that it had, which was NPOS, which is no position. And we were able to use that number, right? We used it from find. We would do find, and if we got that value back, then we knew it didn't find what we were looking for. So we have used a static member, but we haven't created one. So let me go through the steps of how to create one. So here in the payroll record, in the .h file, I'm going to just create a dummy class, right? And this is just going to be the static test class. And in this class, I'm going to create a static member, but I'm going to make it public. So I'm going to put it in the public section. And it is static, so use the keyword static. It is a constant, so I'm going to use the keyword const. And then I have to specify what type it is. And in this case, we want double, and then give it a name. Now, since it's a constant, I'm going to start it with a K and then a capital letter. And this is my static value. And that's what goes in the class declaration. And this doesn't create this constant, it declares it. It says, hey, we're going to have this data member that is a static, it's a constant, it's a double. Notice all three of those are important, and this is the name. Now, what static says is that this is a data member that we only have one copy of. No matter how many objects we have, we only have one copy of this data member, and everybody has access to it. And the people within the code within the class has access to it. Because we've made it public, then code outside of the class can have access to it, like in main. So it just says we only create one. Now, if we have another one, and I'm going to make this private because we do this with data members. If I have another one that is a double but is non-static, and it could be a constant or not, my value, for every object, it will create a very own copy of this value. Right? So each object will have a my value data member, and it can be different for each object. But there's one created for each object, and it belongs only to that object. Whereas this one, you can have 125 objects, and there's only one of these, and everybody has access to it. And that's the difference between static and non-static. Now to define it, because this just declares it and we don't actually have it yet. Notice it doesn't have a value yet. To define it, we do that in the .cpp file. And here we say, okay, this is a constant, it's a double, and it belongs to this class, the static test class. And you do that by doing the name of the class, ::, and notice it comes up. It says, oh, I know one of the things you're talking about, and you'll probably have a list of things that will come up as you're building that. And it says, this is that constant value, and here's where I'm going to give it an actual value. This is when I'm defining it, and this is when this constant will actually be created. And this is the one and only chance, because it's a constant. This is the one and only chance to give it a value. So here I'm going to give it a value, 12.8. All right, so there's that constant. And notice that I don't need the keyword here, the keyword static here. I do need to specify that it's a constant and a double, but I don't need to give it the keyword static. That's something that goes in the class declaration. I do need to associate it with the class and use the scope resolution operator to do that. Now that I have both declared this constant and defined it, now I can use it. And I can use it here in methods that belong to the class, or I can use it in main. So here I can say, let's just see this out. the static data member. And let's see what we get. And the way that I do this, now remember I said you could do this before you have an object of this type. And I can do that just by using the class name. I'll say static test, : and now I have access to that value. And I can use this in computation. Here I'm just printing it out. So I can print it out or use it in a computation. And here we go down here and run it. And what do we get? It prints it out, static data member. So that's the label, right? And then it prints out the value of that constant. Now, the other way that I can have access to it is to actually have something of this type, create an object, right? So I can create an object of type static test, and I'll just say this is my object. And I just create this. Now, because I didn't put any parentheses, it's called the default constructor. And if I haven't defined a default constructor, right, we haven't done that yet, then the compiler will automatically create one that does nothing except create the object. So here, now what I can do is with my object, I can do it, right? So now I can see out my object, static data member, which is exactly the same one as the other one, right? It's not a copy of, it's not its own version. It is the one and only one that belongs to it. And now I can call it with my object, dot k static value. So it belongs to the class, and it can be accessed with no object, or it can be accessed directly with an object of that type. Let's run that. And there we can see the value of it coming from the object. So this is a static data member. And that's how you declare it, define it, and use it.